Okay, so we've got an hour, and so I mentioned yesterday that Mokshaka is going to be doing a couple of slots. There'll be these afternoon slots, and the first one is today. First one is in fact right now, and yeah, so Mokshaka and I go back quite a way to time when we were both around the London Buddhist Centre working in different right livelihood businesses. But we've reconnected more in recent years over this practice. He's been on retreat with me a number of times, but also with Utejaniya in Sweden, actually, last year. And I think he is a real natural for this practice. And I always love his sessions with what he has to offer. They're very experiential. Yeah, but it's that quality of quite a natural and deep understanding of what we're doing and where we're going in the practice that I think he communicates really beautifully. So I'm going to hand over to him and place you in his very capable hands.
Thank you. Well, I'll just say straight out for a start, I feel quite nervous. Never done this to quite so many people, with quite so many people before. So I'll start just by saying I'm going to look at two kind of exercises, really. I hesitate to call them meditations, but two exercises that can help access awareness and can actually help as well when things get a little bit overwhelming. And we talked about that a little bit this morning. And there are various ways of dealing with that. Of course, making the choice to do something else is one option. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a lead practice for about 20-25 minutes, and then we'll have a leg stretch, and then I'll do another one in the second half. I'll just say a little bit of in way of introduction. I think it's quite important to get away from the idea of focusing in this practice, in a sense of, you know, many of us are very familiar with the mindfulness of breathing and the metta bhavana, which are very, very useful practices in themselves. And I think when I first came across mindfulness practice, I used to confuse the two quite a little bit and find myself getting confused. So it's quite important when you're doing these practices, is if you're going to do the mindfulness of breathing or the metta bhavana, to do them separately to this practice, at least initially, although there are, I think, ways of approaching both practices from this approach as well. So first of all, I'd just like to talk about a consciousness and attention. If we look at our experience, we can actually see that we're not, when we're not necessarily mindful, when we're not necessarily aware, we're always conscious. So we're always conscious of things around us, as if the mind is constantly scanning the six senses, the five senses in particular, for information. And we've evolved to do that. So we're quite hardwired to be conscious of a range of objects. And then, so we become conscious of something, and then attention goes to the more intense experiences within that field of awareness. You know, I was thinking of, you know, when I'm driving, I can be driving somewhere and carrying on a conversation with somebody next to me, and I'm still conscious of the traffic lights, when I need to turn, when I need to brake, all of that kind of stuff. And that's almost automatic, but I'm conscious of it. And I'm also conscious of the person that I'm talking to and what I'm saying and what they're saying. And then, of course, you come towards a traffic light or something, or a crossroads where there's a load of traffic, and you have to say, just a moment, I need to focus. And it's quite interesting because one can do all of that without being aware. One's still conscious, and still conscious of many, many, many objects. And attention is constantly scanning through those objects for what is essential, for what is necessary to get from A to B, or to drive a car, or to do anything. So that level of consciousness and attention is well, it's almost always present. And so it's quite important to notice that attention can shift quite, it's almost like we're focusing all the time on something, even though we may be distracted, we're actually focused on that distraction, but not aware. So awareness is, although consciousness and attention are always present, awareness isn't. And it's interesting to notice when it's present, and then be interested as well when it's not, and where was it? Where was attention? Where was consciousness at the time? What were the objects of consciousness? And then when we come to meditation, I think one of the things I often get confused, or used to get more confused, but I still do, is having this association that mindfulness is, I'm being mindful when things are very clear, and there's a degree of pleasure, and there's a degree of joy in the experience and interest. And then, you go to sit next time and it's not there, and you just think, well, nothing, I'm just not being aware, I'm not aware enough. And that's interesting, isn't it? Because I think when there's a difference between practicing mindfulness and awareness and its maturity. So if we practice awareness, at some point it will gain momentum and it will get stronger. And when it's gained a lot of momentum and become quite strong, it becomes interesting and it becomes joyful. And it can be it's very alluring, because it's very pleasant to get into that kind of state of mind when concentration arises as well. And for me, I can sometimes be sitting and feeling quite discontented with my experience because it's not like that. And therefore I can not be very aware of that. And it's being aware of all of that messy stuff that can be going on. But if we pay attention and be aware of that, and can be aware and be with that experience and be curious, interest starts to arise, and then mindfulness gains momentum. But you can't want that. You can't, in a way, you can't sit down and have that happen. Although it does happen, but you can't make it happen. I was, when Vajradevi and I were both on retreat with Analia a few years ago, and there was this horribly creaky shrine room floor, and he had this open shrine room kind of approach, which was, get up and walk around whenever you feel like it, and go out, come back in, and it was so irritating. I remember sort of people getting up and doing walking meditation right next to me, and absolutely thinking, how can I meditate with this? It's driving me mad. It's so irritating. Creak, creak, creak. And then, of course, there were mosquito bites, and and I wasn't comfortable, and I was just, and shortly after that, he told this story about, I don't know where they were, but they were on retreat somewhere. And during the morning meditation, there was a gardener who was mowing the lawn outside, and lots of people came to him afterwards and said, could you maybe have a word with the gardener, because it was so irritating, I couldn't meditate. And he said, all right, I'll have a word with him. And he had a word with the gardener. He said, could you do it in the afternoon as well? And I'm just thinking, of course, yeah, this is, it's like I'm making this distinction between, there are only certain certain objects that I'm willing to admit to mindfulness. Now I'm being mindful when it's like this, and when it's not like that, well, there's nothing happening, or I'm frustrated, or it just isn't working. So what I'd like us to do now is, I think it's quite helpful not to get into a meditation posture. So we're going to take about 20 minutes. So if you get yourself into, a comfortable position, just sitting in an armchair, and I'd invite you to not close your eyes. Obviously, if you really want to, then that's fine as well. But I'd invite you to keep your eyes open. I think when I was first introduced to this practice, I used to find that if I closed my eyes, I would automatically start doing the mindfulness of breathing or something else. Not that you may do that, but I'd encourage you to keep your eyes open, just for a moment, for a little while, just to get away from the idea of meditating as doing something specific, because we can kind of go into an automatic mode with that. So just any comfortable position with your eyes open. Maybe not looking at the screen or looking at the wall or whatever, really. And just with our ordinary, natural awareness, just allow yourself to settle. Maybe invite yourself to relax. Again, relaxation is one of those things that we can try too hard to achieve. And I think of it more in terms of relaxing our attitude and relaxing our expectations, or maybe adjusting one's expectations. So that we in a sense, we're not turning anything away. Any experience will do, any object, anything that the mind is conscious of. And also just to add into that as well, that we tend to become quite focused on intense experiences to the exclusion of others. I was aware before, when I was thinking about this, I was getting quite nervous, and my legs were shaking a little bit when I was doing a walking meditation. And I thought, oh, just pay attention to a few other things. So I just included, what I was hearing and what I was seeing. Didn't make it go away, but it spread it out a little bit. So just invite yourself to relax with an attitude of relaxation, rather than necessarily a physical relaxation, although that may happen as well. But again, we can't force that. So just a relaxed attitude, in the sense that whatever's going to happen will happen. Whatever has arisen has already arisen. So first of all, just incline your curiosity in the direction of sounds. What can you hear? You'll still be able to feel bodily sensations and thoughts and visual objects, candles, screens. But just incline your awareness in the direction of sounds. paying preferential attention to sound. Noticing how many subtle sounds, the absence of sound, your breath, my voice, any machinery or traffic, and just noticing the range of sounds that you can hear. Almost a panorama of sounds. Some very brief, some lasting seemingly a long time. Some sounds near, some sounds further away. And notice that you can make that discrimination. Noticing the different sounds and their length. Still noticing everything else that's happening, but paying particular attention to sounds. You may also notice that you know what they are without trying to. We automatically know what sounds are. Instantly we know that the car going past is a car. So the perceptual process is happening as well as the sensory process. Perceptions just arising very quickly, instantly. Notice there's a slight difference between the perception and the concept of the sound and the actual sound. And just noticing that you're aware of sounds, of hearing. Just noticing that hearing is happening. You're not choosing what to hear. And now gradually just let the attention, the awareness move towards noticing what physical sensations you're conscious of. Different bodily parts. Tingling, warmth or coolness, pressure. Weight, movement, beating, breathing, just to the point of noticing. You don't need to try almost at all to notice these things. In fact, if you make too much effort, you'll miss them. And again, the perceptions will be there as well. You know what they are. Still noticing everything else, the sounds, the thoughts, what you can see in front of you and around you. But paying particular attention to the field of bodily sensations. Just as they are, simple, neutral, slightly pleasant, slightly unpleasant. And just noticing is enough. Just staying preferentially in the direction of bodily sensations, but still being aware of the other sounds and sights and thoughts. And then inclining your awareness just gently, slightly in the direction of the visual field. Notice that you are seeing. You might be looking at things as well, but that's a slightly different thing. So you soften the gaze and just take in the whole visual field, not just what's directly in front of you. Noticing the objects in the periphery. And notice that the attention is moving around from object to object in the visual field. It's very subtle. Picking out different objects in the visual field, movements, still noticing sounds and bodily sensations, but preferentially noticing the visual field. Taste and smell are fairly inactive at present, neutral. And then everything else that's happening is in the mind sense. The perceptions are in the mind sense, not in the objects. Feelings are pleasant, neutral, or unpleasant. Are largely mental. Noticing thoughts, images, feelings, stories, wanting and not wanting, irritation, all happening in the mind sense. And then bring your attention back to the body, bodily sensations. And then let the attention go wherever it wants. Let it wander in all of those different fields or spheres of awareness. It's always predominantly, consciousness and attention is always predominantly in one of them. If you notice when you're caught up in intensive thinking, one isn't very aware at all of the other senses. Just let the attention drift and wander between sounds, bodily sensations, visual sensations, mental sensations. Just noticing, where is the attention now? Where is awareness? What are you conscious of? And notice what you're conscious of. What are you attending to? Just ordinary conscious awareness. Notice if your awareness goes to the hands or the face, or the sound, or the thought. Just noticing where the attention's gone now. What's it resting on? And what else are you conscious of apart from what the attention is resting on? Include as much as possible. However insignificant seeming. Don't focus on anything in particular. Don't be drawn in by any particular object. Keep the awareness broad and inclusive. Consciousness and attention usually want to close in on objects. We don't really have any choice where the attention goes. It just goes to the most intense object that we're conscious of. And then gradually bringing this practice to a close. And we'll just have a 3-minute leg stretch. So that's coming back at 17:41. Exercise we're going to do is something I learned fairly recently. It's kind of obvious in a way, but I went on a retreat. Well, again with Vajradevi, I think I'm stalking her or something. But we were on retreat with Andrea Feller, and she taught this. She talked about this practice, and she calls it the and practice. Very often when we're talking about meditation, we talk about getting distracted, and then there's often that, particularly with some practices, this tendency to keep bringing the awareness back to an object, and that anything that takes you away from the object is a distraction. With this practice, it's more helpful to think of and rather than but. So, for example, Vajradevi was talking this morning about the bantam of awareness, or the mountain of awareness. No, the bantam of awareness, or the mouse of awareness, and the mountain of a particular mental state. So, you might be caught up with, I don't know, say an argument. You're having an argument with somebody, and you know how it goes. It's going around your head, and you say this, and then they say that, and then you say this, and you have all these fantasies about either losing the argument or winning the argument, or however it plays out. And it can be quite intense. And one can then easily get into, well, I don't want this. I don't want to be having this now. I want to be having a nice mindful walk, or whatever it is you're doing, or you're meditating, and this issue presents itself, and straight away there's a kind of payoff as well of going in that direction. So, for example, if it's ill will or anger or frustration or a sense of being wronged or unappreciated or excluded, it can be anything. So the mind is playing over this injury or betrayal or whatever it is. And it can be very, very intense. And the more one gets into a struggle with it, the more power you give it in a way. Or you can, the traditional way of dealing with things like that is to, so say, for example, cultivating the opposite, or developing metta for this person that you're having an argument with. But with this practice, it's more helpful to not allow yourself necessarily to go along with the story, because it can become quite intoxicating, can't it? To notice, you notice that that's happening, and to then bring in the other senses. So you're walking along the road, or you're sitting meditating, and you're caught up with this storm of mental activity, and perhaps your heart is beating, and you're getting tense around it. Awareness tends to collapse in around that particular object, and we stop noticing that it's an object, and that's what's, we're caught up in it. It's real. We are it, as it were. So with this practice, what Andrea Fallow was talking about is to and. So and seeing is happening, and hearing is happening, and bodily sensations are happening. So it's not but or instead of. So it's allowing that particular mental storm to be there. So you're not trying to get rid of it in any way. And from that perspective, gradually what happens in a sense is you create a bigger container for that mental, emotional, physical storm to kind of play out without one being completely caught up in it. You may still be caught up in it, and you and thinking is, and hearing is happening, and bodily sensations are arising. But I want to, you go back into that anger, or that embattled state of mind. I'm using that as an example. It could be anything. It could be a craving, but I'm using the example of an embattled state of mind. It's quite intense and all-consuming. So it's, and hearing is happening, and noticing sounds and bodily sensations are happening, and noticing the arising of bodily sensations and the embattled state of mind. So then, instead of the awareness being caught up with that state of mind, it's starting to loosen up a little bit. So that embattled state of mind may well continue and persist. And from that perspective, as things begin to settle down, you can then start to look at that embattled state of mind. Explore it a little bit. What's it feel like? Where is it? What effect is it having on my body? What effect is it having on my general state of mind? And then you may find yourself being absorbed into it again, and hearing is happening, and sensations are arising. So you're trying to create this greater sense of containment, that klesha, or that painful, aversive mental state, or alternatively a craving state of mind that's intense, so that you can actually look at it a little bit more objectively. So you're not trying to push it away. You're not indulging in it either. So it's the middle way. You're neither indulging it nor suppressing it. And from that point of view, you can start to look at it a little bit more clearly, and maybe wisdom will arise with awareness, because it can only arise with awareness. And maybe some clarity will arise, or the mental state may just evaporate. So again, we'll just take sometime comfortable position. Eyes open or closed, whichever you prefer. Preferably if you can keep them open, it can help. And you may not be in a conflicted mental state at the moment. It's not necessary. So just allow yourself to move between, allow attention and because attention and consciousness are always happening. They're always, the whole field of sensory experience is constantly being scanned by consciousness and attention. Notice that as happening and allow your awareness to take all of that in. And notice that hearing is happening. And seeing is happening. And bodily sensations are happening. And thoughts are happening. And emotions may be happening. Most of the things happening in each of those fields is extremely subtle and barely noticeable. Seeing is happening, and looking is happening. Notice the difference between seeing and looking. And hearing is happening. And bodily sensations are happening. Many, many, many bodily sensations are arising every moment. Thoughts flickering through the mind. So it's remembering to include and that itch is happening. And the intention to scratch it happened. And the intention to pay attention and be aware is happening. And awareness is happening. Keep noticing what the mind is knowing. And it's always knowing something, whether you're aware of it or not. And bodily sensations are happening, and breathing is happening. And the digestive process is happening. I can hear my stomach. And thoughts are happening. The thought of your awareness is happening. Letting the awareness become broader and broader. You can be quite playful with this as well. Relaxing the attitude to allow whatever arises. To be present, to be there. Okay, and then bringing that practice, that exercise to an end. And that's it. I think on Saturday I'm going to do a little bit on anchoring, some anchoring exercises. Okay, I'll hand you back to Vajradevi.
Thank you very much, Mokshaka. Yeah, very much appreciated. Breathe deeply. Yeah, so we'll leave it there for now. Just to say we will focus a little bit on the full moon tonight. If you like, this is the full moon is well, obviously it's depending where you are, it may not be visible. But if you like, the full moon is taking us very close to New Year, taking us the last full moon of the year, taking us from this year and leading us to next year. So yeah, maybe that's all I'll say for now. But yeah, I look forward to seeing you in a couple of hours, 8 o'clock UK time. And thank you again, Mokshaka.